fiery torpedo to the jugular. This is Honey Badger Radio, radio with bite.
Hello and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. I'm your host, Allison Tiemann, and with me today is Rachel Edwards, Hannah Wallen, Crystal Garcia, and Alice Majeur. Tonight's episode is the Craven Cliven Barker. Excuse me, that was a really bad mistake. The Craven Cliven Bundy. But before we dive right in, we'll be discussing a few other items. The Boko Haram kidnapping and killing, the latest news in the Title IX, and the Dear Colleague letter, and some lovely, lovely feminist inanity. So now I'm going to hand the mic over to Hannah with the news.
It helps if I unmute.
Take it away, Hannah.
Cliven Barker.
I know. I'm sorry.
That was awesome.
It's hard to recover from that one, but please go ahead and take it away.
That's okay. Now I can feel better about all the things I'm going to butcher in this one. At least I know how to pronounce Alicia Silverstone.
Yeah.
Yes, in the news, a recent study by Jessica Turchik found that 51% of college men report being sexually assaulted or raped since the age of 16. The study, entitled Sexual Victimization Among Male College Students, Assault Severity, Sexual Functioning, and Health Risk Behaviors, also found that being a victim of sexual abuse was associated with increased risk of alcohol abuse, increased sexual risk-taking, and increased sexual dysfunctions. This study adds to an ever-increasing literature on the high rate of sexual assault victimization sustained by men. I do have something to add to this because I did a little math, and according to the report, 48.4% of the total 302 participants reported female abusers. And that's out of 153 of the 302 participants who reported abuse, which is about 95%.
Yeah, also, it's starting to get to really ask the question: why are these college these almost witch hunts against college men? You know, why is there no mention of female perpetration in all of this? Where did it go? I mean, because it's starting to get more and more of these studies coming out indicating that there is an extremely high level of female predation, of sexual predation of college men, and yet all of the literature on colleges is directed at the the sexual predatoriness of college men. So it's really underlining the hypocrisy here. But go on with the news.
You're right, it does. Next in the news, we have actress Alicia Silverstone among those increasing number of Jewish parents advocating against circumcision. In her book, The Kind Mama, she says the following: I was raised Jewish, so the second my parents found out that they had a male grandchild, they wanted to know when we'd be having a bris, the Jewish circumcision ceremony traditionally performed 8 days after a baby is born. Silverstone writes, when I said we weren't having one, my dad got a bit worked up. But my thinking was, if little boys were supposed to have their penises fixed, did that mean we were saying that God made the body imperfect? Thank you, Alicia, for standing up for the genital integrity of all infants.
Looks like you might have missed the last one there.
Wait, here it is.
Yeah.
And what's the news segment without yet another report of feminists pimp-slapping a woman for saying something they don't like? Natalie Barr describes her experiences working her way up the career ladder from cadet to presenter on Sunrise Australia's #1 breakfast show. She says she experienced no discrimination because she was a woman, and suggests that women stop blaming men for their lot in life and practice some introspection if they're not happy with how their careers turned out. This, of course, has earned her the ire of feminists who, not happy that a woman who are not happy that a woman has challenged the necessity of women maintaining a persecution complex. In classic victim-blaming fashion, another successful white female, Wendy Tuhey, I hope I'm pronouncing her name right, festers about how women are discriminated against, then accuses Barr of saying women fester about how women are discriminated against. Tuhey concludes with, quote, Natalie Barr was not taken down by what some woman-unfriendly and always angry commentators refer to as the perpetually outraged sisterhood. The sharp and short social media backlash was something for which Barr needed to take ownership herself, end quote. So let me get this straight. It's woman-unfriendly to point out that the perpetually outraged sisterhood, or point out the perpetually outraged sisterhood, even while that sisterhood has attacked a woman for not being perpetually outraged. This is definitely a new and daring way of defending against an accusation. Simply say you're not doing something as you do that very thing.
Oh, yeah, I found that one just really funny because it's replete with this Wendy Tuhey essentially saying, we're doing this thing, and then we shouldn't be said that we're doing this thing. You know, I'm gonna fester about women being persecuted, but nobody can say that I'm festering about women being persecuted. And I find this so much when I argue with feminists. Like I'm in an argument on YouTube right now with a feminist, and I said that feminist theory says that men oppressed women throughout history. They oppressed their female relatives throughout history. And by necessity, if you're going to propose that men treated their female relatives like property, you're also basically proposing that men are sociopaths. And she insisted on saying that, no, I don't actually believe that men are sociopaths. I do believe that they treated women like property, though. And it's sort of one or the other, you know. I mean, you can't assert a belief and then say you're not believing that thing. Yeah. It's like so many times I get arguments with feminists who say, well, no, your characterization of patriarchy theory that's not what feminists believe. And I say, well, do you believe it? And they're like, well, yeah, of course I do believe it. But, and it's like, at what point do you just own it? Just own the fact that you're perpetually outraged. Own the fact that you believe that men treated their female relatives like property. Own the fact that you act this way. Own the fact of the way you are acting right at this moment and saying that you are not acting this way in this moment. And I can see that you are. Go ahead, Hannah.
Well, the other thing I'm noticing in common with all three of these stories is a theme of feminists delegitimizing an issue when it happens to somebody else. Because you have the whole thing of feminists trying to obscure or even just outright deny female perpetration of sex crimes against males. You have the whole discussion on circumcision, both sexes, and feminists are all about bodily autonomy until you start talking about little boys, and then it's okay to clip. And yes, there are some feminists that stand up for boys' right to bodily autonomy as well. But when they say it, the reason they give is not because bodily autonomy is a human right that should extend to everyone, but because, oh gosh, we would be hypocrites if we didn't stand up for boys too, so we have to. Which really isn't so much standing up as it is covering one's own ass. And of course, in the last one here, we have feminists whose anger is legitimate, totally legitimate, and feminists whose personal experiences are totally legitimate. They totally prove that sexual harassment is rampant because anytime a feminist talks about sexual harassment, she has experiences that she can tell people about. But as soon as a woman says, no, I've never experienced that, I don't know what you guys are talking about, her experiences are not legitimate. And as soon as men are angry about anything, anger is suddenly abusive.
Go ahead, Alice. Come on in. Water's fine.
Alice?
Alice?
Oh, poker.
I think we've lost Liz. You might be on mute there. I can see that.
Unmute you. Unmute yourself.
Unmute yourself. This is the perpetual problem: is that the you got to mute to make sure that the line stays clear.
Oh snap!
Oh, if you're not muted, then I'm not sure what's going on. Yeah, it's a mute point now.
Oh, well.
You're just muted. Okay, well, I'm going to have to move on to the next show segment. We'll try to get that sorted, the sound issue sorted. But this particular show segment is on the Boko Haram killing boys, but crossing a line when it kidnaps girls. Okay, apparently I'm talking over you, Alyssa, but I can't hear you talking at all. I'm not sure why. This is definitely an interesting sound issue.
Yeah, I can't hear you talking either, Alyssa.
Okay, Alyssa, I'm going to have to ask you to stop talking, and we're going to move on to the next show segment. I'm sorry about this. We will try to figure out that particular sound issue. But we do have to move on. And if the rest of us can't hear you, then we have to assume that nobody else can as well. Okay, so once again, Boko Haram kills boys but crosses a line when it kidnaps girls. The Western outrage machine has once again churned out a distorted picture of a human rights atrocity based on its own morally bankrupt hierarchy of worthy victims. We're talking about the situation in Nigeria, in which Islamic extremists known as Boko Haram have been for the last 8 months fighting a war against Western education. If you listen to the current media coverage of the situation, you would think that Boko Haram only started up 3 weeks ago with its kidnapping of 250 girls, and is only against women and girls getting an education. And you'd be completely wrong. Here are 2 other incidences in Boko Haram's 8-month horror campaign against Western education. On the 29th of September in 2013, gunmen entered the male dormitory in the College of Agriculture in, I'm never going to pronounce this right, Jubai, Yobe State, Nigeria, killing 44 students and teachers. In February, Boko Haram set fire to a log dormitory at a school in northern Nigeria, then shot and slit the throats of the male students who tried to escape through windows during a pre-dawn attack. At least 59 boys and young men were killed, including many who were burned alive. The New York Times says of Boko Haram's February attack, quote, "The assailants who have vilified public education as blasphemous, then burned down dormitories and other buildings and shot at anyone trying to escape. None of the women were reported to have been harmed. After the attackers separated the students, they told the women to read the Quran, go home, and find husbands, according to the Yobe State Police Commissioner, Sanusi Rufai. The attackers then set about killing the male students, burning alive at least 8, the commissioner said. Some of them were ready to graduate, Mr. Bengo said. These are students who are writing their final exams. Commissioner Rufai said the assailants did not touch the female students. Up until Boko Haram's kidnapping of female students, this has been its modus operandi. Kill the boys, leave the girls alone. One wonders if their change in plan is simply because they've run out of boys to kill, so they'll have to start threatening real people with vaginas. And, yeah, it's an interesting situation. It was another one of those situations that we reported on last week, about the World Food Program no longer giving food aid to men and boys and only giving it to women, and their stated rationale for doing that is because women are more likely to die in famines, and yet statistically it's men who are more likely to die in famines. The West simply does not care about men and boys, and that reflects in its coverage of these issues. And at the same time, it demonstrates this incredible moral bankruptcy of creating a hierarchy of worthy victims. It presumes to judge other cultures morally. Of course, these particular bandits really do deserve to be judged, but where was this Western media, where were the social justice warriors when it was boys getting their throats slit and burned alive? Go ahead, Rachel.
Oh, sorry about that. the general belief is that Islam is only hurting women. I mean, usually when you hear feminists talk about Islam, they talk about the way that it tends to harm women, but they never really focus about how this is also harming men. And I mean, they're always saying, okay, well, feminism is just gonna work it out, but they really don't focus on how these kinds of ideas cannot really take root in a kind of society that is also governed by religion, and extreme religion.
Yeah, it really is. It's a situation where they will not, and really, if you do not accept if you do not understand the full situation, how do you create an intervention that actually does anything positive? Like if you're denying half of the problem, I mean, it's like trying to fill half a bucket. It just doesn't work. You have to understand the full problem to actually create an intervention that do something positive.
And they'll say things like, oh, well, by the very act of protesting that's going to help. I'm like, well, no. That's not really going to help change the law when you're running on Islamic law.
All right, and just to interject, AVFM Radio has told me that I need to pronounce it right. It's Boko. Boko. How many times would you like me to say this to make up for mispronouncing it during the presentation? Boko. I'll just pop in periodically. I'll just interrupt as they're speaking. Boko. Boko. It'll become my new catchphrase. All right. Yeah, it's just egregious how we have these blinders on in the West, and then we presume to throw our weight around morally, even as we engage in the same kind of, moral bankruptcy that we accuse other cultures of engaging in. And go ahead, Crystal.
Oh, yeah, sorry, it took me a minute to unmute. Yeah, that's like when you see those photos, and there's this one photo that's circulating, and it shows these men and women in Iran and these women in bikinis, and then it shows supposedly Iran last year and a stream of women in full burqa. And that's horse crap, because if anybody looks up Iran today and looks up videos, that's not how women normally dress in Iran. Like they're wearing, they have something that covers their hair, or they have something that's even smaller, that it's a small strip that they tie around their forehead, around their hair, and they wear makeup, and there's even, the moral police tend to usually be women who they do wear burqas, but there's this one video on YouTube, and I'm gonna have to find it again somewhere, but there's the moral police, a woman in burqa. I don't know what she was actually saying, but possibly hassling the girl for whatever, and the girl turns around and pepper sprays her, and then just walks away. So the idea that some people have, online spreading the stuff that, women in Iran just walk around in full burqa all the time is incorrect. And they go on these campaigns of, oh, look at them, they need feminism. And it's completely incorrect.
Well, the other thing with Iran is about 70% of their graduates in STEM studies are female. So in some ways they're doing something right that we're not. And if we want to look at it purely in terms of feminist initiatives to try to get women in science and technology, we might want to look at some of their social customs and see where it is that they're encouraging girls to do just that. And I mean, if you look at the standardized testing on math scores, girls in the Middle East actually outscore boys. And they outscore boys in the Middle East, and they outscore boys in East Asia too. Very so-called patriarchal cultures, and yet they're achieving a female participation in the STEM studies that we haven't achieved in the supposedly, liberated West. And so they're doing something right, and maybe we should just swallow our pride and try to look at their cultures. And yes, there are ways that they can improve, and yes, there are ways we can improve. So where are they getting it right, and where are we getting it wrong? Instead of looking at it in terms of let's face it, we are the wealthy, white, Western people who are going to inform all the other people in the world exactly what's wrong with their cultures. and exactly how they're less moral than we are. I find that, I think that the other approach to recognize that they are doing something right and maybe we have something to learn from them, I think would be a much healthier approach. Go ahead, Rachel.
Well, actually, I had this very conversation on Facebook just the other day, and the answer to this question, the reason why they're doing better in all those STEM fields, has to do with, there's a study of, I think, about 50,000 pupils over 53 countries, and what they found was that boys and girls have they have the same interests across the board. But the difference is, in the poorer countries, the women were more likely to have an equal interest in math and science because that was their pathway out of poverty. And they just found that to be the case across the board. It was not unnecessary. It wasn't the less egalitarian a country is, the larger the gap between the genders, the more that women tended to be interested in math and science, which is odd. But it's sort of a paradox, and it completely throws a monkey wrench into everything that feminists are saying about the aversion to women in math and science. But that it's instead their choices that lead to this gap that we're seeing in the U.S. and the rest of the West.
Awesome. Yeah, I just wanted to say I was prompted to look into that in a great article. It was from AVFM. And I can't remember the name of the article, but it was discussing all of that. And I can't remember if it had that video linked or I was searching and I found that video as well. So I just wanted to put that in there. That's where I got it.
Yeah, I would like to offer an alternative interpretation. And that maybe the absence of a government-funded entity telling these girls that they are victims of a society that's arranged against them tends to give them the kind of confidence or personal confidence, or tends to not erode their personal confidence in areas where you actually need a lot of personal confidence. STEM fields are difficult, and you need to be able to say to yourself, if I work, I can understand this. And if you're being constantly told that the world is arranged against you and there's nothing you can do, nothing that your personal choices and actions can do to change that, you might be less inclined to take the steps necessary to understand calculus or biochemistry or whatever else, because you don't get that sense that your actions really matter.
That's true. Yeah.
So that's another possible interpretation.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
But the thing about it is that if indeed boys and girls have, those typical stereotypical interests across the board in all of those 53 countries and on every continent, then maybe it is the possibility that, when there are no barriers, they just pursue their interests.
Yeah.
Well, that's actually one of the things that I recently had my attention drawn to an older one of Karen's videos that I hadn't watched in a while, and she was talking about the difference between oppression where, somebody puts you in danger, and the feminist take on oppression where they describe the rules in some of these countries run by religion as oppressive to women without thinking about the things that women are getting a pass on in those countries. And a lot of those areas are very war-torn. It's not just a poverty factor. It's you go outside, you might get killed factor. And women are not necessarily the level of target that men and boys are. And in a lot of those areas, boys are combatants. And I just saw recently a YouTube video discussing that. We just had a discussion on a YouTube video discussing that. And it's a lot harder to pass calculus or pass physics or even pass your native language grammar classes if you have to take that level of risk every time you walk out your door than it is if you are cushioned from it to an extent, because the greater level of risk is handled by the opposite sex.
Yeah, actually, there's a great article on feminist critics, and I don't know the name of it offhand, but it actually looked at the statistical likelihood. Oh, it's called "Getting Everything Wrong," and it's from feministcritics.org. Incidentally, if you want, they have some really amazing statistical examination of feminist assertions and gynocentric assertions. It's well worth your time if you just have some time to browse the blog. And once again, it's feministcritics.org. And the particular article I'm talking about is Getting Everything Wrong. And what they looked at was a statistical analysis of what kinds of military action or aggressive action resulted in what kinds of proportions of deaths of men and women. And what they found is that the more control that the combatant had over the target of his or her violence, the more likely it was a man who ended up being targeted. So if you were looking at bombings, you were looking at a proportion that was much closer to the actual proportion of men and women in society. But once you started looking at something like kidnap executions, for example, you're looking at 98% male victims. And those are the kinds of violence that the combatant or the aggressor has complete control over who they're kidnapping and who they end up torturing to death. And that's 98% male. And the more control that the combatant has over the victim of his or her violence, the more likely it is a man. And that is an expression of male expendability, and it's true in the Middle East. And in that sense, if you look at the burqa in that context, having a visible marker of your femininity, a marker of your femininity that is visible at, I mean, how many yards can you see someone walking in a burqa? I mean, that makes a hell of a lot of sense if you want to avoid, if you're in a situation where combatants will specifically avoid targeting you. It makes a hell of a lot of sense to announce to the whole world, as far as you can, visibly, that you're female. And, I mean, that's another thing to consider in those situations as well. But it looks like that we're wrapping up on that particular topic. Oh, wait.
One thing. Since I did mention the video, I couldn't remember the name of it offhand. It's called What Feminists Don't Know, and it's on a YouTube account, Real Raven 2000. And I've linked it in chat for those who are in chat.
All right. Well, thank you, Hannah. All right. Our next topic is Title IX has colleges and universities coming and going. Title IX states that, quote, no person in the U.S. shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. Title IX has typically been used to downsize male athletic programs on campuses because of a lack of reciprocal interest in female students in athletics. However, recently Title IX has started to be used by men pushing back against the erosion of due process and sexual misconduct cases on college campuses, and challenging the lowering of the evidence standard from clear and convincing to preponderance established in the Dear Colleague letter. In addition to the college judicial processes, which these men are saying are stacked against the defendant rather than for the accused. We don't know which schools are currently under investigation by the Office of Civil Rights for Title IX or Clery Act complaints. But we do know that there are 52 pending Title IX investigations as of April 3rd. So we know that 52 institutions are being investigated for Title IX violations brought forward by the defendants in campus sexual misconduct cases. So men who have said that they have been essentially been denied due process have been bringing forward these investigations. Now, meanwhile, while this is occurring, while these men are bringing forward investigations into them being discriminated against as defendants in sexual assault cases on campus, we have 55 colleges and universities being federally investigated for their handling of sexual abuse allegations. And these particular investigations were started after complaints were filed with the Office of Civil Rights by alleged victims of sexual assault. And they're part of an review to see whether or not schools are complying with Title IX in protecting female victims of sexual assault through their college college judicial process. Now, the list of institutions under federal investigation for their handling of alleged victims' complaints includes at least one institution, the University of Michigan, that's also being sued by a suspended male college student who alleges the university committed violations while investigating a sexual encounter between him and another student in March 2012. So what's interesting is now we've got these two bodies, these male college students who are saying that they're being discriminated against in these college hearings on sexual misconduct, and then these female college students who are alleged victims saying that they're being discriminated against in these college hearings of sexual misconduct. And so almost like this pincer move directed at colleges and universities. And I wonder if the salient point of this is that sexual assault cases should be dealt with by the police and the justice system, not college and university faculty. And go ahead, Hannah. Step right in.
Well, I see a result of this I really hadn't thought of before I read this before the show. But if you think about it, there's two kinds of colleges. You can divide them into two categories, rather. There's multiple kinds of colleges, but you can divide them into two specific categories. Colleges that get a good deal of their funding from the state and sort of have that cushion between themselves and bankruptcy of the state being there to bail them out, and colleges that don't. And so you have this situation where the state is coming back, and of course they're trying to take control of the university setting, and there is this push to bypass due process and bypass the justice system using colleges, and the inevitable backlash when people's civil rights get violated. But one potentially inevitable result of this is that colleges that don't have the cushion of state support and that safety net of state money are going to end up in financial distress because they're going to try to follow these state imperatives to get what they do get from the state. And they're going to get sued if they violate people's civil rights. And they're going to end up with more money going out towards lawsuits than with money running the campus. Because it's not something, they're not going to be able to follow the state requirements without violating people's civil rights. So this lawsuit situation is going to be inevitable. And the next result is going to be that colleges that are not chained to the state may end up starting to be eliminated.
Yeah, I also wonder why people are going to colleges instead of the police. I find this very odd, as the colleges are somehow given more authority over criminal cases. I don't understand how that started or what's going on with that.
Well, they're not given more authority over criminal cases. It's just that these college misconduct hearings allow them to do punishments like suspensions and kicking men out who are accused of these issues or these sexual assaults. So it's like a separate judicial system now where they can levy these kinds of punishments, and it really doesn't have like a traditional judicial oversight. So it's not like superseding the police or the regular, judicial system, but it's sort of separate, and it's its own little weird little bubble world. But the real point is that why are they taking this stuff over? Like these are crimes, and these are adults. Colleges and universities are not these people's parents.
Right.
They should be going through proper It's parallel authority. Tana just put that in the chat. It's parallel authority. Colleges and universities shouldn't be taking over this stuff. And these are adults. They should be tried. This stuff should be tried in the actual judicial system. It should be investigated by actual police. But go ahead, Alyssa. Alyssa?
Oh.
I still can't hear you. I still think we're having the sound issues. So I'm gonna. I think that's pretty much it for that particular one. You know what? Alyssa is going to eventually resolve these sound issues, and then she's going to be like talking for 20 minutes straight on all of the things that she didn't get to say.
Oh no!
Yeah.
Ginger rage.
And also Boko. Okay, so
I got one thing to say on this, and it's just occurred to me. This is like, when kids are little and they ask for something, and maybe they go ask dad, and dad says no, so they go ask mom. That is what feminists are doing with this. They demanded something from the justice system. They wanted to bypass due process, and they wanted to bypass the need to prove their cases, and they didn't get it. So now they're asking for another route to get what they want.
Well, yeah, it does sort of feel like that. They have sort of eroded due process in sexual crime cases, but they still haven't got it the way they want it. And they really, I'm not exactly sure well, actually, I do have a very, very good idea when they'll be satisfied. And that's when a woman can say, that man raped me, and he just basically goes to jail, or it's just shot on the spot. I mean, women don't lie, right?
Yeah, that's what they want.
Which really is kind of childish too. Yeah. Don't make me stand up and prove my case. Don't make me be responsible for telling the truth or any level of accountability. Just give me what I want.
Yeah. And then they cannot see the possible the possible fallout from that. They don't see that if you give one group of people carte blanche to legally destroy another group of people anytime they want, that does not create a society that's stable and balanced and capable of perpetuating itself to the future. It's not possible to do something like that. There has to be checks and balances. But let's move on to the next. This is a bit of a low ball. These two issues are a bit harder, a little more difficult, more frustrating to deal with, but more painful. But this one is a low ball because it's just a feminist saying insane stuff, which is both typical and amusing at the same time. Male privilege makes me say things. Alicia Eberhardt writes that men make her say things that make her feel angry and sad. Specifically, those things that men make her say are, I have a boyfriend, in the face of men's romantic interest in her. She quotes a fellow Tumblr feminist, quote, male privilege is, I have a boyfriend, being the only thing that can actually stop someone from hitting on you because they respect another male-bodied person more than they respect your rejection, lack of interest. End quote. If this breaks Alicia's brain, I wonder what her brain would do if it ever realized that for men, often the only legitimate reason to reject a woman's sexual interest, not just her romantic interest, her sexual interest, is because they've already spoken for. Otherwise, they're impotent, or a fag, or shallow, or any other epithets against their masculinity and self-identity. It always amazes me how myopic feminists can be when she asserts this and she's never actually even given a thought to the other side of the equation. Okay, fair enough. It's an easy out to say, if some guy is interested in you, it's an easy out to say, hey, I have a boyfriend. And you don't have to explain that you're just not into it. You just don't want to deal with him right now. Just, whatever. It's just an easy out. Preserves his sense, his pride, and it just sort of ends the conversation right there. But the other side of that is that guys are also held to the same standard. Because if a guy rejects a woman, often the only thing that she will accept, if he rejects her sexual advances, the only excuse that she'll accept, and it's excuse. It's a situation where this is an excuse. He needs to have an explanation why he doesn't want to have sex with her. The only excuse she'll accept is that he has another woman. So this isn't something that men only expect of women. This is also something that women most definitely also expect of men. And if this woman had taken a moment to just extend her brain out and imagine what it was like to live as a penised person, she would have realized that. Go ahead, Rachel.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Sorry, I got distracted. Somebody was saying something. But anyway, what?
Okay, well, unfortunately, Rachel has a boyfriend to deal with, so let's move on to Hannah. Hannah, go ahead.
Well, what I gotta say, and it's getting actually confirmed in chat by some of the guys in there too, is that unlike with men respecting when a woman has a boyfriend or a husband, women don't very often. And a guy wearing a wedding ring, that wedding ring is a bullseye. That is, see if you can take him away, see if you can get him to cheat. And it's not all women. We're not going to say all women are like that. But enough that view it as a competition, that that wedding ring makes him a target as much as it can be a protection. Not that anybody has to have protection from being asked out. Obviously, you can say, no, thank you, I'm very flattered, but I'm not interested. But that's a whole other story. The thing is, it is absolutely different when it comes to women. There's much more often there is a sense of competition that makes a guy a target when a girl finds out or a woman finds out that he's taken.
Well, here's the thing. When I was reading this article, it was made clear that she likes to go to the kinds of places where men typically pick up women. And it's really obvious that, if you don't say that you're taken, men will, buy you drinks and give you the attention that they would if they, that they believe of single women. When they believe you're a single woman, they think, okay, she's a potential person that I can, hook up with or go out on a date with later or give them my number. And that'll be different if you say, well, I've got a boyfriend. All of that special attention and free things, they just suddenly disappear. And, I'm wondering if that's what the thing is, because she doesn't want to give up the stuff that she gets, feigning being single at all.
That's entirely possible.
Yeah. She doesn't want to give up those things at all.
She wants the courtship rituals, but doesn't want to acknowledge that they are courtship rituals.
No, she doesn't want it. She says, oh, well, I want to talk to a guy, but I don't want to tell him that I'm taken.
Yeah, I'm actually wondering now if this whole I have a boyfriend kabuki comes after he's expressed an interest in her enough. It's a drink.
She's like, oh, they're removing my agency. It's it's male privilege. It's bullshit.
Right. It probably does come after several drinks or dinner or what. I'm sure. This whole. Some of these women actually play that game, and then they're like, well, I don't understand why he got upset with me. I mean, he only bought me like Cavassier, and it's like they play that game to get what they want, and then then they're pissed off when they're called out.
Yeah, they always can.
What I was going to say is that it's it's sort of dishonest if you play that and then because to accept something from someone who you're not interested in. I mean, to even accept something from someone, period, I would think is sort of it's sort of a I don't want to be paid for my time unless I actually have a shingle out there saying that pay me for my time. But but to not only allow these guys to perceive that you might be open to it, and then complain that when you finally say no after the cup, the drinks that they've purchased for you, no, I'm not really interested in you, and then have them say, well, actually want an answer as to why, instead of just accepting it. At that point, you've sort of created sort of a relationship. Once you start allowing someone to buy something for you, you have created a relationship, and they deserve an explanation, more of an explanation.
Yeah.
Why you were ending it. But go ahead, Rachel. You were trying to get in there.
Yeah, they're always complaining about men complaining about the friend zone, but they never acknowledge how it gets to that point. And really, it comes from women consistently leading men on and not saying, well, I have no interest in you whatsoever.
Yeah, I hate that friend zone argument. It's such pure ridiculous, because that's exactly what they do. They they come to the guy, they use the guy emotionally. They know that guy cares about them. There's no secret there. So they use that guy emotionally. When they break up with some other guy, they use that guy emotionally, and they come and they lean on him, and they're like, oh man, this man. And then they go back out and date someone, and then they come and lean on him again emotionally again. So they're creating this intimacy with this person. They're instead of creating the intimacy with them, they're just using them. And when the guy's like, hey, I thought maybe we were creating something here. You come to me all the time. And you spend time with me. They cuddle with the guy. Like, he's not your teddy bear. He's a human being. He cares about you. And then you're coming over to his place, crying all over him, cuddling him, hugging him. What, and then they're like, what? We can't just be friends. Well, if you were actually his friend, you would be giving him back something. If you were actually his friend, you would be acknowledging the time that he spent comforting you, and you would say, look, I really appreciated your time. Thanks for looking out for me. What can I do for you? And that's a process that those women never go to. They just, we can't just be friends. When they're not being friends, they're being users. I hate that. I hate that story.
Oh. Okay. We're gonna try one more time to pull Alyssa onto the mothership. Alyssa, can we hear you now?
I'm speaking. Can I be heard?
Yes.
Yay!
Thank God! I was tired to start throwing things. All right, so to catch up, I find it really odd that feminist mothers believe that they need to have complete autonomy over their own body, but when it comes to their male children, they're willing to cut off whatever the fuck they want because they think they're entitled to such things. So, to cover that.
Okay, Alyssa's opinion on circumcision. Moving on. Next, Alyssa's opinion that we missed.
Yeah, the next one, in talking about the whole judicial system with the universities, I think that the reason that they're setting this up is because it gives feminist organizations easier ability to control how men are judged and ruled in situations where there could be false rape accusations, but the feminists don't want to acknowledge that. They want to pretend that every woman out there is a victim of rape, whether they were or weren't.
Okay, number 2, Alyssa's opinion on Title IX and the Dear Colleague letter. Take it away. Next one.
Okay, and talking about the whole, being in the friend zone and the whole relationship thing. I think if women are so insecure with their ability to speak that maybe they shouldn't be going out into public places. If you can't look at a man and be like, look, I'm sorry, you're a nice guy, but I just don't want to, I don't really feel the need to be talking right now. I just want to be alone. If they can't say that, then they don't need to be in public.
And we're caught up. Okay.
Woo!
Yay! All right. Okay. Great. And I wanted to add to that, and sort of build on something that Crystal was saying. Once we finally got Alyssa into the conversation, when they do this friend zoning stuff, they are talking to these guys in a very intimate fashion. If you're talking about your relationship with another man, that is, I can understand why these girls, or these women, well, maybe I should call them girls because they don't sound like women. They aren't creating appropriate boundaries. You don't talk to one guy about your relationship with another guy, especially if you're having sex with one of them. I mean, it's just inappropriate to bring your relationship into certain situations. And what you're doing is you end up creating an emotional intimacy with the second guy who you're not having sex with that you're denying to the first guy you are having sex with. So what is this, your freaking harem? You got one guy for the emotional intimacy, the other guy for the cock? Like, that's so... It's so exploitative and demeaning and, dare I say, objectifying, that it's like, dude, what lady, dudette, what the fuck? You know, this is not appropriate behavior. If you have a problem with this relationship with this guy that you're having sex with, you talk to him about it. You don't try to create that emotional intimacy with this other guy. And that's what I wanted to say about. That's all I had to say about that. Anybody else want to talk on this topic at all? Before we move? Go ahead. Go ahead, Rachel.
Well, I mean,
go for it.
Well, you know, this is really something that I continuously try to bring up in conversation and make known. But the thing about what you were saying was with the friend zone is that feminists and just women in general, when they hear the whole friend zoning thing and men complaining about the friend zone, they always think it's men feeling that they are deserving of sex. That's what they make it about, and they don't make it about women not making these clear boundaries and letting men know that they have no intention on ever sleeping with them or becoming intimate with them in a relationship.
Yeah, well, the other thing with the friend zone is it does involve a lot of duplicity.
Yeah, it does.
Because they're saying they want certain traits in a man.
Yeah.
And then they don't have any interest in this guy who has those certain traits. And, like, I'd be sort of pissed off. That's false advertising. Right. But I think it actually might go even deeper than that. I mean, it's sort of a deception that these girls are playing upon themselves. Because they seem to have the one guy for the sexy times and then the other guy for the emotional intimacy.
They're attracted to jerks, but they want to be friends with the nice guy. That's what it is. They don't want to take the plunge and really commit to the nice guy. They'd rather have the kind of relationship that they have with somebody that has the appearance of danger or who treats them like crap.
Right.
Well, I wonder if they're even exploiting that kind of guy too, because they're really not engaging in that kind of emotional. It's like they've cut part off. They've decided
using them for sex, aren't they?
Yeah. This is the guy I'm going to use for sex. This is my daddy figure that I'm going to cry on. You know, it's like the Madonna whore complex, except for men. But anyway, Alyssa's been waiting patiently, so I'm going to open it up to her. Come on in, Alyssa. Ginger.
I know. I know a female who she doesn't know how to treat men. She's got like 3 kids from 3 different daddies, you know, and she came up here and like hung out with us for a little while, and it was interesting that, you know, while she was here, she had this guy come in and he was pretty much her simp. You know, she used him for his money. She used him to build things for her. She used him for all kinds of shit. He paid thousands of dollars to fix her truck and all kinds of different things. And meanwhile, she wasn't dating this man. She had a boyfriend, you know, back home, and she never told her boyfriend about this guy, and she never told this guy about her boyfriend. She wanted to make sure that they were both completely separate. And, you know, the one thing, and this could just be my own, you know, opinion on it, but her boyfriend that she had back home, he was a good-looking guy, you know, and he was a musician and all kinds of things like that. The guy who she was using for money, he wasn't that great-looking. You know, I mean, he was a nice guy. I really liked him, you know, but he wasn't, you know, what I would call sexy. And I found it really interesting to note that, you know, she did have this one guy that it was really all just about, you know, he was sexy and he had certain attributes that she found sexy, and then this other guy that she just used for profit.
Well, there's that, but there's also the women who aren't necessarily using the nice guy for that much money, but just emotionally. And I wonder how much of that is they're actually afraid of commitment to the guy that they find sexually attractive. So they separate it out. So they don't actually have to face the potential the potential losing themselves in an actual real relationship. But go ahead, Hannah. I just stepped all over you, and I apologize.
Oh, you're fine. But this really, honestly, this goes right back to that whole concept, the way feminists look at this does, of things being legitimate when they apply to women, but not when they apply to guys. Women are allowed to have sexual feelings, allowed to have sexual interest, allowed to have emotional attachments to people, and emotional interest in people, and emotional and sexual needs. But as soon as a guy responds to the flirting and the acceptance of his nurturing and the give and take that takes place in a normal relationship, as if a relationship is building, all of a sudden it's illegitimate, and it's supposed to just be okay that he gets treated as though he is the other half of a relationship, and then boom, but you don't have a real relationship. You've just been used. And to me, that really looks like the feminist standard for rape. Feminists will treat sexual relationships in which the woman didn't get what the woman wanted as rape. If the woman doesn't feel satisfied with the emotional attachment, then she's been abused. If she doesn't feel like she's happy with the way things turned out, she's been abused. And there are instances where they will call it rape because she regrets it later. But I would think that guys would regret getting caught in this situation too. And they would regret being stepped all over and having their emotions dragged through the ringer. And it just seems to me, though I wouldn't necessarily agree with feminists on their take on rape, this fits the same standard. So they're violating their own standards, which goes, again, right back to that. It's what's legitimate and right for women is not for men.
Well, I would actually even go further and say that feminist conception of consent is very traditional. You see it in the breach of promise laws, that if a man, 50, 60 years ago, if a man had sex with a woman and didn't marry her, she could, sue him or send him to jail for having broken a law. And that's a very traditional notion, this idea that men owe women something for sex. And as I was saying, this idea that these guys, I really get the sense that in many cases these women are playing one guy off of another. And one of the reasons why is because they really cannot handle a relationship. They can't handle a man who demands that they be emotionally available and also they find sexually attractive. It may be that they can't even conceive of such a creature, much less maintain a relationship with one, because in that kind of relationship, you do lose power. You do lose a certain amount of power when you're with someone you find sexually attractive, but you also have a deep emotional connection to. And there's a loss of self and a loss of power there that maybe these women just can't handle. So they create these situations in which they have the emotional intimacy with one man and the sexual intimacy with another, and are exploiting both at the same time. But unless anybody else wants to jump in with a final thought on that particular topic, we should probably go to the main topic of the show for the night. Anyone? Bueller? Anyone? Okay, let's move on.
Charlie!
I don't know what you guys are talking about.
Of course you don't.
Oh gosh.
Starfish really loves you, Allison.
A starfish loves me? Okay. Yeah. Just as long as it's not an octopus.
Hey, it's not tentacle rape, it's tentacle love.
Okay. Yes.
It's tentacle surprise sex. You didn't know that was going to happen in this.
That's how people in Japan say hello.
When you went
to... I'm just kidding.
Okay. Oh, God, that's a horrible, horrible thing to say. All right, no. I'm moving on. The Craven Cliven Bundy. All right. The expectation of society continues to be women and children first. When men fail to meet this expectation, they are shamed by the media and portrayed as cowards. When Jamie roars, am I saying that right? Rohrs?
I have no idea.
Jamie Rohrs lost his family in the dark Aurora movie theater during the infamous shooting. The media saw him as a neglectful father. It did not matter that he was disorientated towards the attack or that he frantically searched for his family outside of the theater. It also does not matter that every member of his family made it out alive. Because he had not stayed behind, he was seen as a monster. When Cliven Bundy stood in opposition to the federal government with his militia, he was well aware of this expectation and had no problems exploiting it. His female supporters knew that if they stood out front, it would stop the gunmen in their tracks and turn any woman that was fired upon into a martyr. Yet of all things Cliven Bundy has done, the idea of women shielding men was the most unthinkable. One must ask, if we live in a society that continues to say women are strong and capable, why do we insist on shaming men into protecting them? And that is a very, very good question. And I'm gonna hand over the floor to Alyssa, and Alyssa is going to ginger it up in her ginger style. So go ahead, Alyssa.
Yep, gingivitis is out of the box. Everybody, watch out. So, I'm under the impression that when it comes to Mr. Bundy, he had female supporters present. That does not mean that they were up front trying to protect everybody from getting shot. They were just present. And the media took that and immediately decided to say, oh, they threw themselves in the front line, and just to get everybody's focus and attention on him as if he was some misogynistic asshole, that was willing to throw a woman onto a landmine. And in my mind, in the truth of it all, is that he had some female supporters, yes, but they were there supporting with him, not there to be used as a wall for defense.
I would agree with that. I think the whole timeline appears to be that the sheriff Mac, I think his name is Max or Mac, said that they would put women up front, and it was just a suggestion. He may have been misquoted, because if the feds shot on the women, it would be all over everywhere, and they would be turned into the feds would be turned into monsters because of that. And then another thing was said was that the women volunteered to do this. So that in presenting this as some sort of misogynist thing, that the misogynist men have forced the women misogynistically with their misogyny, patriarchy, male privilege, toxic masculinity, and then instead of recognizing that these women were volunteering to take a bullet for their beliefs, whether or not you agree with them, you're actually taking away these women's right to choose and taking away the actual potential heroism of this. Again, whether or not you agree with their beliefs, the reality is if they volunteered to go forward, what was really happening is that they were making a statement about their willingness to sacrifice for their beliefs, and not just their willingness to sacrifice for their beliefs, but their willingness to use their bodies as shields for the men who also shared their beliefs. And that's really what it would have been. I mean, this would have been a situation where women were human shields for men. And of course, that's used to paint the men involved as these direly horrible people. Now, whether or not they are is another discussion. But using that to paint them as horrible, if it was a situation, if it was reversed, it would be the expectation that men would, in fact, put themselves in harm's way to protect women. Now, the reality is that if we had the same expectation of women, we would have expected these women to put themselves in harm's way because first of all, they would be less likely to be hurt because they're women. And the feds know that if they fire on women, they're going to look horrible. But also, we would have this expectation that they do actually protect men. And it's really that hypocrisy that really sort of sticks in my craw, this idea that, first of all, that we don't have this expectation that women protect men. But second of all, that simultaneously, feminists will assert that we should have this attitude that women can be as brave and as courageous and have as much leadership potential as men, but we don't hold them to the same standards. If you're going to hold men to the standard of protecting women, then you got to give them the recognition that they've been held to that standard. I mean, it's just this double standard and this lack of consistency just really drives me nuts. It's one or the other. Choose. If you want to be seen as capable as a man in your own way, I mean, maybe not as physically capable, but a woman can still catch a bullet for her beliefs. If you want to be seen as capable of that, if you want to be seen in terms of I'm willing to sacrifice for my belief rather than I'm a woman, protect me at all costs, then you have to step up and be expected to be held to the same standard as men. You can't just be seen and then not be held to the same standard. And that is my long little rant, and I'm going to, not little, very long. I'm going to step out of the way for Rachel. So go ahead, Rachel.
Okay. The thing that really disturbed me, I think, the most was going back to that Aurora shooting and that father who ended up, running away from his family, but he kind of got, lost in the confusion and the chaos. I think they threw I think he threw a gas bomb in there. The attacker. We're going back to the Batman shooting. The guy who went and shot up that movie theater. But anyway, the chaos ensued. He lost sight of his infant son, I think his daughter, and his girlfriend in the chaos, and he saw the door and he thought to himself, oh my gosh, I think they're all dead. They must be dead. He frantically called again and again and again, and he was, fighting himself on whether he should go back, because if he died in there, his children might not have a father if they survived. And the media just shamed him. There was even a Facebook campaign after he proposed to his girlfriend to tell her to reject his proposal because he was a coward. And that's just insane.
All you can say to the feminist assertion that men have oppressed women historically or currently is, what oppressor in history was ever shamed for not protecting their property or their slaves? Never. This never happened. There was never an expectation that a slave owner die to protect his or her slaves. I mean, there's never the common perception. If one did that, it would be just like, wow, that's amazing that this person did something so stupid to protect his or her property. But it's like, how can you simultaneously see that men have this expectation, and they've had it throughout all cultures and throughout history, that they protect women and children, that they put their lives to protect women and children, and simultaneously say that they were oppressing them. Anyway, that's a little bit off topic. Does anyone else want to comment? You guys have gotten quiet. I don't know if I'm talking too much and I'm pushing you guys out the door, but...
Well, what I did hear about the whole Cliven Bundy situation was, what I gathered was that the women were, saying, well, we should go to the front, and because they're not going to shoot us. And I don't know, it's hard to say, because I think the only person that actually went on camera was the sheriff. Mm-hmm. And it's hard, and he might have misquoted, and he may not have understood if the women did say that they were going to go to the front or anything like that, but it does kind of sound like something that the women would do, because they understand that that's just going to make the federal government look bad. Just all over the news. And, they did absolutely pull out after that. After the conflict, I think over safety issues.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it would have done one of two things. If the federal government had shot at them, it would have been a much bigger statement. And alternatively, they could have prevented violence from escalating by being out in front. So, I mean, in many ways, it's a very brave act. I'm sort of reminded of there were some hostages in the Middle East a while back, and the hostage takers said they would free the women, and the women insisted that they didn't want to be freed because they knew that if they got freed, it would be that much harder for the men to get freed, and they were worried about what would happen to the men if they were freed. And in those instances, and there's another instance in Africa, there was a village full of women, or not full of women, but they would go in and they would try to take the boys and force them into being soldiers. And the women, some of the women died trying to protect their husbands and their sons and their brothers from being forced into basically conscripted slavery. And I mean, so there's these instances of heroism on the part of women. And what I always find it interesting is that once it hits the Western media, it's always turned into, once again, female victimhood. And I'm going to step back and let Alyssa take it from here.
I think when it comes to the Bundy incident, the reason why the women were there was because, you know, they knew that if the federal government shot at them, there'd be a huge outrage. But if the women hadn't had been there, you know, and the federal government had shot at those people, there wouldn't have been as loud of an outcry as if it had been a bunch of women, because after all, men are disposable, you know, and the women being there, keeping the barrier, you know, with a bunch of cameras all watching, you know, it allowed for, you know, the government to really take a step back and go, do we really want to do this? Because, you know, the federal government has always taken a chance to, you know, overstep its bounds when it can, and it does it on a regular basis. And I think just having the women there to, you know, pretty much say, hey, look, we're here, is what really brought a bunch of attention to the issue. I hope that made sense. It was kind of a bunch of random thoughts all thrown into one.
Actually, that made a lot of sense. And it also kind of explains a little bit about why the partly left-wing and the feminist, largely feminist media is so offended by this. Because among other things, it does two things. If the government felt that the people overall of the country agreed with them on their position on this, they would have stepped in. Even if they hadn't shot, they still would have stepped in. Look what they did in Waco. I mean, they burned down an entire building full of men, women, and children. But so they knew they couldn't just step in here because they knew they did not have the public behind them. But the other aspect of this, and this is the big reason why the media is so offended by it, is because it makes feminists look bad. And you think about the contrast between these women and the women who pitch and moan and whine and cry because somebody says hello to them on the street. And it's like looking at the difference between, you know, a whiny little child and a full-grown adult. It's the warriors versus the whiners. And of course they cannot just let those women be who they are. And they can't let the act be as courageous as it is. Because if we develop this expectation that women will, for lack of a better term, man up, then feminists are going to have to do it too. Or nobody will take them seriously.
Yeah. And that's something I got into that on this about street harassment and how we don't really expect women to just deal with it or ignore it or just take care of their own business. I mean, yeah, somebody's being an asshole, but it's an opportunity. You know, you can be a smart ass back. You can think of something really clever to shut them up with. We don't think of women in terms of their ability to cope. We think of them in terms of constantly pandering to their ever expanding victimization. But I know that we're sitting on a pretty interesting debate because we got some very, very strong opinions about government, about the federal government and the state governments in this very room. And I know I know some people are chomping at the bit to get to their opinion, their real opinion about the Cliven Bundy situation. So I'm going to pull Alyssa laughs evilly. So I'm going to, because Rachel has requested the floor first, I'm going to give it to her, and I'm going to encourage her to not let anything back. You know, if you say exactly your point of view, This isn't about people not, swallowing their opinions because they don't want to offend anyone. So go ahead, take the floor and run with it.
Well, first off, I really did want to say that I do agree a bit with with a good deal of what Hannah's saying about the quality of women. I mean, really, one of my main issues with feminism early on was that I had the idea that they were trying to create strong, independent, self-reliant women that could take care of themselves. And instead, I saw that there was this victim narrative and that they were emotionally crippling women instead of creating stronger, better women. And as far as the Cliven Bundy situation goes, we're talking about a man who not even Fox News will support anymore. We're talking about a man who Sean Hannity will no longer support because he made some seriously racist comments. And whether or not this was taken out of context, just across the board, I don't feel that this man is particularly the kind of person that I would want to be around. He seems like the kind of man who is not doing this out of any kind of philosophical principles. To me, it seems that he is doing this to suit his own ends because he feels that he is above the law. And what this has to do with is cattle fees. Well, basically, you have a bit of land, and you are allowed to run your cattle along this land, but you have to pay a monthly fee, and you have to pay about, I think, for that particular area of land is about $18 a cow, $18 a head. And the general price that usually people in Nevada pay for running their cattle along is $15. So there's, it's a couple more dollars. I understand that, and I understand that could be problematic, but this is what is being done across the state. It is not this main injustice. It's not asking a great deal for him to, of course, pay the fees, which he has neglected to pay for 20 years. And everybody else in the state, except for in that particular area, pays. You shouldn't just be able to say, well, no, I'm not going to abide by the laws because I feel like I'm above the law.
Go ahead, Elise.
I think that there's been a huge injustice here done by the federal government, because if you look at how long this man has been doing this, he's had his ranch, he's been doing this for I can't even remember, but most of his life he's been doing this. And it started out when he first started doing this that his family was on the land and that they didn't have to pay anybody because it didn't belong to anybody. And then, the state of Nevada came in and said, no, this is our land, so you're going to have to start paying us. He's like, okay, well, I'll pay the state of Nevada, right? So the state of Nevada claims that, this is their land, and so he's paying the taxes to Nevada as he's continued to do, and he's done that the entire time. But then when the federal government came in and started saying, no, you need to pay us too, and it wasn't just, a little bit for the cows. They're demanding that he pays like $1 million+ for the grass that the cows are eating. And all of this is said because the government is claiming it needs to be, that the land needs to be, what is the word I'm thinking of? Okay, 1 second, I'll just switch it up. They're saying that this land needs to be cleared and taken care of, and that the cows need to not be on it because of a tortoise preservation that was there for an endangered species. And the endangered species benefits from the cows being there. And Bundy went in and paid, just a bunch of money to put in all kinds of different waterworks and, a bunch of things to make the land better. And when the federal government came in, they tore down everything that he put into that. They tore down all the waterworks, they tore down everything there, and the center that was there for the endangered species of tortoise euthanized like 200-something of them because they didn't want to take care of them anymore. Instead of just releasing them into the wild where they would be okay, they just killed them. and the federal government has this huge thing going on where it's stating, that this is all for the tortoise preservation, and it's just a bunch of lies.
Well, the $1 million that you're talking about are basically what he owes in fees that he has not paid. We're talking about racking up 20 years of debt and unpaid fees. And he is of the mindset of I think it's sort of like the what was it called? The sovereign state movement, that basically he should not have to abide by the rules of the federal government. And I just don't agree with that at all.
I have some quick questions on this, real quick, because I'm a little confused as to where these fees come from. Now, hang on. Here's my questions.
Okay.
When they declared themselves, when the federal government and the state government declared themselves owners of the land, did they use eminent domain, and did they explain exactly why they were suddenly the owners of this family's land?
Actually, they'd owned it all along. They just didn't really put a claim up for it until they realized that they wanted to try to conserve the desert tortoise. And from the whole idea, the whole mentioning that they killed them, I don't understand where that comes from at all.
Well, the next question is, how did the government come towards owning? Was this a nature preserve that's been around for centuries?
Basically, they decided they were going to take the land that they already owned, and they wanted to try and put some things in order to try and limit the amount of...
But how did the government come to own the land in the first place?
I think they purchased it at one point. I can't remember when, but I do know that they actually have ownership of that particular area of land. It's not like it's without an owner, or that he owns it.
The state of Nevada is the one that has the deed. The federal government doesn't have the deed. They just came in and claimed that because we own America, I guess, that he needs to pay to the federal government.
Well, when it comes, I think it probably has to do with the Endangered Species Act. And I have seen, of course, some people exploiting the Endangered Species Act before, and there is, I guess, probably a reason to actually look further into that. But when the place where the fees are coming from actually comes from charging them for the amount of damage that is going to occur from 900 cows grazing on a piece of land. They're going to eat a certain amount of grass, and that's not really always immediately replaceable. Well, and they're of course shitting everywhere.
Yes, but the endangered tortoise eats the cow poop because they get more nutrition from the cow poop than they do from actually eating the grass. I know that sounds disgusting, but
I never said it wouldn't. I never said it wasn't disgusting, but those cows are not indigenous to the area.
Well, I got another question about this.
Plus years.
Got another question about this, because we're talking about grazing, right? And the cattle grazing is supposed to be a big bad thing. And this is in an area where there has always been an animal fairly similar to cattle doing exactly that. In fact, it's been a while since I've been to a powwow, but one of the biggest complaints was the white man's slaughter of the buffalo, which you can hear the stories from the older Native Americans. Which, honestly, they don't say Native American at powwows. They say Indian. But old chiefs, older people who know their history will tell you that there were times when the buffalo would go running past their areas where they lived, and it would take the whole day for the herd to go by. They were so huge. And they ate. And it just seems kind of odd that one animal grazing like that would be okay and natural and undamaging to the environment, but another animal grazing the same way and running the land the same way would suddenly be damaging and dangerous. And this is one of the things within the environmentalist movement that I find very suspect. To where they'll make these statements and these claims, and they don't always back them. And if you look at history, it doesn't always back them either.
I can answer your question there. some types of ungulate eat different types of grass. So it is possible that the cattle are eating easier to get grass, and thus doing more destruction to the environment. So the buffalo might have eaten a tougher grass, and the cattle eat an easier grass. So I mean, they can specialize in different types of grass. So there can be a difference in the kind of destruction that they end up doing. I don't know what kind of grass this particular cattle like to eat.
Well, to be honest, cows you have to be really careful with. They will eat a wide variety of things. And if you let them get into the wrong thing, they'll kill themselves by eating something that gives them so much gas, because they don't release it fast enough, and they will actually they'll actually die from having gas that is bad enough that it damages their insides.
If I may intervene for a second, the ranchers have been using this land for over 200 years, and with these fees that the federal government has been pushing on the ranchers, there have been a bunch of ranchers that haven't been able to afford it, so therefore their ranches have closed down, and there has been less cattle on the land. And it has actually shown that since there has been less cattle on the land, it has actually had devastating effects to the tortoise.
Well, the site that you actually showed me that was showing evidence of this, I'm sorry, but I don't really...
There's more than one.
Okay, well, I'd really like to see where the evidence is, because it also goes into sort of conspiracy theory kind of stuff about the Chinese coming in and making a power plant on the land, and I really... If you make that kind of claim, I want to see overwhelming evidence that the Chinese are coming in and want to make a power plant on that land, and that's why this is happening. Because if you don't have that kind of proof, I just don't see the evidence for it.
I think we all would want more evidence, and it sounds like this is something that, to get to the bottom of, we probably would have to do a lot more research about what kind of grasses the cows eat, what kind of poop the turtles eat, what the Chinese are doing.
The turtles run shit, Reddit says.
And it's not directly the Chinese either. It's actually a company that just happens to be in China. And the main person who's been pushing this is Harry Reid.
Yeah, well, this is all, it's very intricate and complicated, and it may be a bit too much for the half hour we have left to continue on. We have some people who want to talk to us, including our very own patriarchy poobah, the grand poobah of the patriarchy party, Nick Reading. Hello, Nick. You're on the air with us.
Ladies? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. What do you have to say?
Great. Oh, well, I don't know actually what the show is about or even who's hosting tonight, because I can't hear the show over my phone anymore now that it's live 365. But on the one hand, it's been a while since I called in, so I figured I would.
Well, what we've been talking about is Cliven Bundy and turtles eating poop. And
I have something far more pleasant to talk about.
Okay, go ahead.
Is Karen there right now?
No, she's Karen is asleep, I think.
Karen's fighting demons. She's fighting the Balrog.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know what that means, but well, I was over at her place this weekend, and we were trying to find a video with one of a local police officer, Shauna Grimes, giving a lecture with our old friend Lee Cattell. And I couldn't find the video anymore. It was a bunch of people talking about rape culture and how it's totally a real thing and it totally exists. And when I couldn't find the video, I decided I would call Staff Sergeant Shauna Grimes myself to kind of figure out where I could find the video. Of course, Dean ultimately did find the video, but surprisingly, I had a very pleasant conversation with Staff Sergeant Grimes. And I told her all of
the background. What's the relevance of Staff Sergeant Grimes?
Yes, Staff Sergeant Shauna Grimes of the Edmonton Police Service.
Okay, Staff Sergeant Shauna Grimes of the Edmonton Police Service, and why? What's important about her?
Well, she was on a panel discussion with Dr. Lise Cattell.
Okay, Dr. Lise
and a woman from
give us all that, like, because there's a lot of people here probably listening, and I'm sure Rachel, Crystal, and
I need some background.
Have no background. Lise Cattell, so give us like the short version.
Oh no, I do. I remember Lise Cattell. Yeah, she was the crazy chick on that radio show. Go on.
on the Q debate, yeah. Yeah, it's funny in how their whole panel discussion about how rape culture is totally real. They never said a word about rape. I don't know why. But
but just to give everybody else a sort of a primer, what's Lise Cattell's claim to fame?
Well, she's the head of she's the chair of the Women's and Gender Studies Department at the University of Alberta.
Okay.
She is the woman who is responsible for "Don't Be That Girl" going viral. So I'd like to give a big thanks to Dr. Lise Cattell.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Lise Cattell.
Thank you.
We
Lise.
could never have done it without you.
And absolutely. And she publicly stated that it was us who were too cowardly to debate the posters instead of her. So on one of these red pill radio shows, we set up just to talk to her, and she declined after calling us cowards for not wanting to debate it.
Okay.
And so anyway, so she is Staff Sergeant Shauna Grimes and a representative from Sexual Assault Center of Edmonton, who also staffs Karen Smith, and a really nice physicist from Africa, and a woman who helps prostitutes get out of prostitution, and a local celebrity, Ryan Jesperson from Breakfast Television on City TV. They were all part of this panel about how rape culture exists and how feminism is amazing. And I had a few points of contention in there that I wanted to make a video out of, and I still might. But I called up Staff Sergeant Shauna Grimes because I actually did appreciate everything that she said in the video. She demonstrated a lot of very good police ethics, I thought. And I called her with concern that people in Edmonton were building a threat narrative about me and the men's rights movement in general. So I told her about the work that we did. I told her about the involvement that we had with the police so far, and I told her about the Danielle Detremont case and how there is a $3,000 reward for any information leading to a conviction of her alleged attacker.
Actually, this is a great segue. Just a sec, Nick. I'm sorry to interrupt with my feeble vagina brain, but this would be a good time to mention that the Honey Badger Radio is offering an additional $1,000 for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the man responsible for or allegedly attacking Danielle Detremont. So the total now is either $4,000 or $5,000 from men's rights groups or men's issues groups to find the alleged man who attacked Danielle Detremont. Now, the attack took place in Toronto, and Danielle alluded to the idea that it was in relation to her feminist activism and her attempts.
Hold on. Are you sure it was in Toronto and not Kingston?
Oh yeah, Kingston. Sorry.
Yeah, it was Kingston, Ontario.
Kingston, Ontario. Thank you for correcting me. It was in Kingston, Ontario, but she alluded to it being in response, that she was attacked in response to her feminist activities, and specifically her activities trying to get a men's issues group in, was it Queen's University?
Yeah, it was Queen's University.
A men's issues group in Queen's University shut down. So we, men's rights activists and people, groups interested in men's issues are very much want to make sure that if there's anybody who is within our position, who agrees with our position, and who actually went to the extent of using violence, that we find that person and we make sure that they're not welcome anywhere in our community. So it's really
we will crucify them ourselves. Yeah, absolutely.
Complete exile.
Yeah, completely exiled. So we want to find this person. So because we want to find this person, this alleged person, because we don't know if it was a man. Well, she says it was a man. We don't know if it was a men's rights activist, but if it was, we want to find them. We want to kick them out of our community. And that's why many of the groups, including the Honey Badger Radio, have put up $1,000 each for any information leading to the arrest and conviction of this particular person. And that's that explanation of what's going on there. So go on with the rest of the story about Staff Sergeant. What was it again?
Shona Grimes. Staff Sergeant Shona Grimes. Like I said, I think she's a good cop. When I told her that I was anti-feminist, she kind of groaned, but she's entitled to her political biases, as we all are. And but she's still, even after telling her that, she was still glad to hear that we were operating within the confines of the law, and that she also gave me some good advice. She said that if I was worried about people, because I've got a sort of a special lead on some information about a bunch of people in online reporting, suggesting that I should be reported to the police just because I ran for office. Report, like they're the Facebook group with pictures of me from high school, like my high school yearbook picture and all this stuff. When Don't Be That Girl broke, because they were all trying to get me. They were all trying to find out who I was.
Stalkers.
And yeah. You know what? If it was the other way around, it would be stalking. But they're just concerned citizens. And she told me that if I was concerned about, if I wanted to know about any accusations that have been made against me, I could get what was called a FOIP, which is a Freedom of Information Protection or something like that. And someone tells me it's about $25, and I can find all the accusations that have been made against me. Even though the names of who did it will be redacted, but it'd still be, I think it would be quite hilarious. I think it'll be even funnier than the 150 allegations of sexual assault we got against alleged serial rapist Karen Smith.
Is everybody here?
That's my story. That's my story. That's all.
Oh. Well, thank you. Is anybody else here?
Did anybody make official accusations?
Yes,
actually.
Official accusations? I believe people there were quite a few people in North Korea who said that Karen Smith had been under the I'll never pronounce his name.
No, I meant against
Kim Jong-un.
Yeah, Karen Smith had been appointed director of rapology.
No, that was the People's Republic of China. But they said that she had ties to Kim Jong-un.
Well, maybe she was.
I believe it.
I heard.
Maybe they're just into being tied to people.
Japan, with her big, lizard tail.
Lizard tail.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
She can only be stopped by Mothra. Okay.
Okay. Well, we're talking about the Godzilla levels of raping that Karen Smith is engaged. I think she once raped the moon.
So that's it. That's my story. I figured I'd finally drop in and say hi to you, ladies. And can you guys get James to call me on this number after the show, please?
All right. Well, I think that James can hear you, so if he's inclined to do that, he will do that.
I will do that.
All right. Thanks a bunch. All right. I'm gonna go, guys. Have a good night.
You too. Good night. Watch out for Karen Smith.
We must all watch out for Karen Smith.
She's
dun.
All right. Okay. So let's settle down after that. Let's bring on the alien. Let's bring the alien into the mothership.
Beam him up, Scotty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The alien is
And
here.
And just remember, it's not rape if you have a mind control device. The probing is completely consensual.
Wow.
Well, that's what that feeling was.
You be using a dildo or anything this time.
Hey. Don't talk about the probes like that. They're very sophisticated devices. They have multiple levels of interaction and sensory input.
Designed using
Actually,
analytical geometry.
Actually,
I don't think batteries and leather straps really count for multiple levels of input.
No. That's just to make sure there's no struggling. Come on. Anyway, I got two comments here.
Before you go
First
on,
comment.
I have a question.
Okay.
What is the purpose? I mean, what are you learning from our colons?
Oh, okay. You see, I actually discussed this in the chat last week. The thing is, with aliens, we probe up the ass simply because that's usually where we find your heads.
Makes a lot of sense.
Oh.
I guess you really are what you eat.
Exactly. But in this case, I have two comments. First one is, going back to the friend zone, actually, it's a parasitical relationship. So women are literally becoming alien face huggers, and they're implanting something into the guy's stomach which will later kill him.
It's called an ulcer.
Yeah, it's called an ulcer.
Yeah, this is an ulcer.
Gosh. Wow.
It's called plaque.
And as to the whole Cliven Bundy thing there, if you notice, when it's the same kind of concept with the military. If we don't let women into the military, we're misogynists. But if we let them into the military and they get hurt, we're misogynists.
Yeah.
Sort of like
So you're basically
you can't win.
Misogynist.
You are a misogynist unless women get anything they want and not get hurt.
Yeah, well,
And then you're a misogynist for overprotecting them.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You're a misogynist. That's all it is. We're all misogynists. We all hate women.
I take it back. Predictive misogynist leaves open the possibility that they're not. So basically, it's you're always a misogynist, no matter what.
Exactly.
Everything is a technical foul.
Yeah.
You're essentially a misogynist until a feminist tells me that you're not. Of course, the reality. Well, here's my question: how do we know that the feminists actually know what is and isn't misogyny? I mean, if you assume that everything is under patriarchal control or alien mind probe control, how do you know that you're outside of it? How do you figure out when you're outside of being patriarchally puppeted by, the strings of male privilege?
Well, see, that's the whole point. As long as they can continue to claim that it's misogyny, that they're under the control, that there's a patriarchy, they have power. The moment they say, oh, we're out of it, then they're out of a job. So it's never going to happen.
Yeah, it's pretty much... It's a thing that supports itself or perpetuates itself because it's only really about having power over people and not really about accurately describing reality. And at the same time, if you say, well, this doesn't accurately describe reality, they go nuts on your ass.
Self-perpetuating psychosis.
Yeah.
And Allison, Bo the Suck You Kitten waves hello to you.
Sorry?
Bo the Suck You Kitten.
Oh.
Bo the Suck You Kitten. She's waving hello to you right now.
Bo the Suck You Kitten.
The fuck you kitten.
Suck You Kitten. Yes, that's her name. That's her full name.
I'm gonna die.
She's just waving right now at you.
Okay, what does she look like?
Actually, if you go to my YouTube channel, I've got some videos of her.
Okay. Oh, now it's time to plug Nephinor's YouTube channel. So go
Yes.
take a look at Nephinor's YouTube channel. He promises not to probe you while you're watching his YouTube videos. Or should I?
And actually,
that's a lie.
I'm going to be doing a video soon regarding something that Men's Rights Edmonton is going to be doing at the end of the month.
Well, it's definitely a circle jerk in here.
Yeah, let's be honest,
It's going to
Nephinor,
be
it's Hitachi
fun.
magic wand. It's not a probe.
Hey! Leave the tens probe out of this.
There's like 20 attachments for it. That doesn't make it a probe. Well, you're probing something. Okay. Well,
actually, no. Another question. So, what like the taxonomy of probes versus dildos versus Hitachi wands versus tentacles? Like, what makes something a probe versus one of those other things?
If it can give us scientific data. So technically, even a tentacle can be a probe because they have sensory input of touch.
Just be a bit slimy.
And if they also happen to be the correct tentacle of an octopus, they can also impregnate.
Yeah, but I've heard that. All right. This is going a silly place.
I like the silly place.
Yeah, I know everybody likes the silly place, but eventually
you have to watch out for
the
Hitachi
that is not going to come out.
tentacle.
It is a silly place.
Yeah, but you know what? The silliness becomes overwhelming, and then we start to metamorphosize into something that is, it's just wrong. It just doesn't.
I will say this: unlike feminism, at least we have a sense of humor.
Yeah. Well, feminists try. They try.
Well, they do.
You give them a pat on the head for that.
They try like that.
With a board with a nail in it, please.
Yeah. They try like that guy from the movie Good Morning Vietnam. Not the star played by Robin Williams, but the other guy that had the puppet named Frenchie.
Yeah, puppets are hit or miss. But anyway, thank you, Nefanor, for the call.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thought that you don't probe us while you're calling. That's always appreciated. You have the courtesy.
I did probe Karen's TV, so I do have control of her TV now.
Oh, okay. I don't know what the heck are you going to do with that.
But he didn't probe Karen, and that's probably a good thing.
I can play random videos if I ever go by her house on her TV.
Wow, that's quite the power. I don't know what the hell you'd use it for, but okay.
She could be watching Arrow and something else can come on.
Yeah, but why would it's just sort of like annoying? You'd just be annoying Karen.
Unless you put on a really good porn.
Exactly my point. Tentacle porn.
Oh God.
Yeah.
All right.
Blue girl.
All right. Let's get a little bit of content.
But she's a sex ninja. How can we not go there?
See, this is why I like Rachel. She's a good nerd.
Yeah.
I'm also a good nerd. What are you saying? I can be a good nerd. I'm just, I have to keep things on track because
Yeah.
You haven't probed me enough, Nefanor. It just, you haven't taught me the deep, penetrating secrets of the alien probe.
That sounds like an invitation.
No, obviously.
Can I watch?
No, you gotta hold the camera.
It's
Come on.
Obviously time to break out the Hitachi tentacle probe dildo.
Illegal.
Or just use the tentacle bat from Saints Row 4.
Sorry?
Or maybe it's the tentacle from Futurama, sorry. Like,
there you go, all of the above.
Becoming one with the tentacle, we're all...
No, but those were genticles, remember?
Yeah, the genticles, yeah, but...
The genticles, okay, alright, now this is become sufficiently insane, yes, now we're even getting it from James.
Okay, we'll get back,
right. We'll go. Thank you,
get it back.
Thanks, Nefanor, for the call. And we got to move now to the final installment. No more arguments over Cliven Bundy. This is a review by Jess K. It is called Tabloid Rewrites. Pop culture tabloids represent our desire as humans to indulge ourselves in a lifestyle that we will likely never experience. They immerse us in a world of vanity, excess, and drama. More importantly, they're a form of media written by women for women. Supply and demand as you would have it. Apparently, Vagenda magazine has decided to extend an opportunity to their Twitter followers to rewrite tabloid headlines as apparently they are so terribly sexist. Some of the results are quite hilarious, but not in the way the contributors intended. In one instance, the headline, George Clooney, reportedly engaged hot, successful lawyer, was changed to accomplished human rights lawyer might be engaged to graying actor 52. Because referring to a woman as hot and successful is sexist, but referring to a man as graying and referencing his age is not, or something. In another instance, the headline is changed, but the massive advertisement above the headline that reads, Hunk of the Week, remains, because objectifying men isn't sexist or something. More clearly, it's not the type of sexism that suits this agenda, and that is made obvious in the comment section where sexism towards men is explained away with flimsy excuses like power, patriarchy, and oppression. The most laughable part of this experiment, if you will, is that upon a closer inspection, 50% of the tabloids were written by women, 25% were written by men, and 25% were simply credited to staff. So apparently the majority of this casual sexism that is supposedly harmful to women is written by, you guessed it, women. That internalized misogyny, or something. And that's, once again, another example of what I find interesting about the feminists when they try to invert something and they take something that is actually sort of flattering to women. When they invert it, they always do this inversion, and they make it so they are actually mocking the man and making him seem undesirable. Like, wouldn't the inversion be like accomplished human rights lawyer engaged to attract a hot, sexy man? Like, wouldn't that be the inversion as opposed to pointing out George Clooney's flaws, physical flaws? Like, if they're going to invert sexism, or what they call objectification, why don't they invert the idea that women are desirable and make men desirable? And then sometimes they do that, and then they add in a lot of violence. Like, they take a music video in which the women are seen as very desirable and they're doing sexy stuff, and they replace it with something that's literally degrading. The guys are like, in leashes, and they're being like physically hurt. It's like, these aren't exact opposites. This one is much worse than the original. Is this how you see the original? Because that's not how it actually was presented. So, does anyone want to jump in and stop me from... Go ahead, Hannah.
Well, this is what I typed in the chat. Feminists don't even acknowledge the actual ways in which men are objectified. So they don't know how to reverse the genders on objectification, because they do not understand that the objectification doesn't mirror between the genders. And this is why, like with Lacey Green's video where she was showing pictures of guys in sexy poses the way women do sexy poses, and it looked ridiculous because it's not the way women look at men. And if you wanted to create the equivalent, you would go through and find all of the pictures online, and there are plenty of them, of men doing work that is benevolent work, being, electricians outdoors, being car mechanics, being anything that women would find very masculine and very knowledgeable and very, very tough, but they're not dressed very well for it. You've got the semblance of the outfit, but not the safety gear and such. That, and it shows off the shoulders and things like that. That is the same objectification as the woman crawling on the table. The difference is, a lot of times men appreciate women just for being there and just for being women. But these women that look for these pictures have to have something about the guy to appreciate. They have to have something that he's doing for them or could do for them. And so they can't really mirror these types of objectification. They can't really mirror the same thing because they don't understand and don't acknowledge what they do when they're objectifying.
Yeah, pretty much. And just to speak to that, I really don't think these women understand what it's like to just appreciate men the way men appreciate women. for nothing more than the fact that they have a female form, and they smiled at them. The woman smiled at them. Go ahead, Alyssa.
I think that, feminists screaming about objectification is just one of the most ignorant things I've ever fucking just heard. Because objectification is part of human nature. We objectify the opposite sex because that is how we find a mate. We objectify who we're going to be with to find, the certain traits that we're looking for in a mate, which is why we do it.
Go ahead. You don't need to wait for me to tell you to jump in.
Okay, wasn't sure. It goes back and forth, so I don't know. Yeah, I think the Razor Blade Candy 2 really put it, said it really well. He was saying how, what, for instance, Lacey Green, what she said was objectification was really talking about, sexuality. It was really just talking about sexuality, and feminists have a way of making that wrong. Instead, we're all sexual human beings, and we're going to notice each other sexually. And feminists have turned that into, oh, you're objectifying me, you're making me an object. And it's really, we're just noticing each other sexually.
Well, yeah. And if you really want to take a look at the difference between, female objectification of men and male objectification of men, you need only just look at the different kinds of porn. You'll look at romance novels, and there's just this very muscle-clad, strong man, and he's just holding this very lithe woman very protectively. And when you look at, gay porn, they're just sort of, it's a completely different animal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what women find attractive is the man being, protective and nurturing and all this other stuff. And doing what they want. That's what, ooh, that's the fantasy. But, gay porn is just the guy just has to be there and be naked. And sitting in a sensual way.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of appreciation, it seems.
Yeah.
That you don't really see much in straight porn. I think it's one of the reasons I've said this before.
There's an appreciation for, just, the penis, just the different, the body, it doesn't necessarily even have to be an idealistic body. There's, every kind of body across the board. Even, very, very heavy, hairy men. There's even a niche for that. Sorry.
Yeah. Bears.
Yes, bears. Yeah.
Yeah. It's sort of like a reverence almost that you really don't see with heterosexual porn, and it's sort of unfortunate because it the way that that definitely feminists, for example, construct the opposition, how they see they take the way men objectify women and they try to pretend that they're creating the opposite. They always seem to add in this really almost hateful quality. They just really can't capture the idea of desiring men just for the sake of desiring them.
Makes you wonder whether gay men are just better people.
Yeah. Let's say what you have to say, but make it quick because we gotta start moving towards the end here.
Okay, I was just gonna say that I find it really just hilarious that feminists like to act like women don't objectify, and I guarantee that every single woman on this planet has objectified at one point or another, whether it was with a dildo or looking at a magazine, or if they're a lesbian looking at another chick. People just objectify. It just happens.
Well, I would actually argue that desire is completely separate from objectification. Objectification is a mental illness, or it is actually a debilitating mental disability. There are people who literally see other people as objects. And I would argue that human desire doesn't work that way. We don't turn off parts of our cognition when we feel attracted to someone. It'd be like saying that we go blind when we find someone sexy. It's nonsense. You don't turn off that part of your brain is so hardwired in to see things as people as subjects, that we even see things that we shouldn't see as subjects, like pencils and tentacles. So it's just something that's so improbable. But let's leave it at that. And it's that time again. We're at the end of the hour, the end of the 2 hours, and it's time to say goodnight. And I want to thank my hosts, because you always make it fun. Very lively group of people. And thank you to James, who helps the show run smoothly. I want to thank our callers, Nefanor and Nick Reading of the Patriarchy Party and Men's Rights Edmonton. I also want to thank the people behind the scenes. Thanks to Phil for doing our animation this week, and to Europa for doing the incredible artwork that we have on our website. And our website is www.honeybadgerbrigade.com. It's got links to all kinds of cool stuff if you want to go see that. And thank you to our webcomic artist Yule, whose work nobody really has seen yet. He's had a few pieces up the blog, but he's got some great stuff coming. And thank you also to Dr. Randomer Cam, who is working on a great new secret project with us that I'm very excited about. I think other people, my co-hosts, are probably pretty excited about it too, the ones who've seen it. Mm-hmm. And pretty crazy, pretty exciting. And thanks as well to our audience. Thank you for listening to us every week. We really appreciate it. It's good to have somebody to talk to and not just screaming these words into the void, although sometimes it does feel like that. And since you, our audience, have stayed with us this far, please consider sticking with us a bit more and donating to help us spread our evil message of equality for men and only equality for women further. Donations can be made on our website at www.honeybadgerbrigade.com, or you can sign into PayPal directly and make a donation to honeybadgersradio@gmail.com. That's honeybadgers with an S, it's plural, radio@gmail.com. We're going to be taking a break this week, next week, but we'll be back after that. Same Badger channel, same Badger time. Good night. Boko!
Like a furry torpedo to the jugular. This is Honey Badger Radio, radio with bite.